to Live with Dawn Butler, and today we're going to be talking about the subject of marriage from a male perspective and from a female perspective. Arranged marriages and forced marriages, what's the difference? And if you want to join in the debate, you can tweet in at Star Media Corp, hashtag Live with Dawn Butler. If you're on Facebook, Star Media Corporation. If you want to call in, then it's 0203 397 2095. Joining the debate at any time. So joining me on the sofa today, two fabulously good-looking guests, I might add. We've got Isaac Ajo. How are you doing? I'm not quite sure I pronounced that right, so we'll come back. And we've got Zaidun Salah. How are you? Good evening. Great. So thank you. So I want to start with you, Isaac. You're a young man.
Yep.
You're 21 years old. You're Muslim.
Yep.
Tell me, when are you going to get married?
Yeah, I've been hearing that question a lot lately.
Because you're almost 22, right?
Oh yeah, I'm 22 in a couple of weeks, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a date set in mind. I don't have a date or when I'm actually going to get married, but ideally it would be when my career is steady, when it's ready. Ideally around 28, 27, but you never know, if I meet someone then.
So a good few years.
Good few years. Ideal age about 27, 28.
Okay. And Zaytun, tell me, 21 for a female not married, how's that looked upon in the community?
But it's good, everyone, when you make career or you finish your uni, you have the job, you can marry. But if you're not ready, you still sit or stay with family or your mother or your father. I think it's difficult to marry back because marriage is responsibility, and responsibility you take when you have your career.
It's a huge responsibility, isn't it? So really, Isaac's quite right to say, is he not, to say he wants to wait until he's 27, 28 before getting married? Why does the community put a lot of pressure on, especially young people, to get married, especially in the westernized world where, you know, people are working and making a career for themselves?
I think my opinion is good to take time. It's not married when you're young, because you can miss many things when you're married, because marriage is not easy. They come children, you come father, you come or mother, but it's married when you manju is okay. But when you're young, I think it's very difficult to handle.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between forced marriages and arranged marriages. There's only actually been 21 cases of forced marriages, the complaints this year, especially in the Somali community, which is 21 too many. And basically what the Home Office has said is that families take children, young people to places like Somalia and force them to get married, pretend it's a holiday and force them to get married.
I think in the Somali community is not force people to marry. They take themselves or they ask father or mother to marry, but I don't think so. Someone or father or mother going to your child and abusing about the marriage, you force them. But for arranged marriage.
Do you think it's something that we don't talk about in the community? I mean, have you heard about this, Isaac, about forced marriages?
Yeah, I have, but one thing that we've got to remember though is these things do happen, and I've heard of things that are a lot worse that happen as well. But one thing we have to remember is not to generalize these things with a certain community or a certain religion, because I can guarantee you 99.9% of, let's say we're talking about the Somali community now, 99.9% of the Somali community wouldn't do that to their sons, wouldn't do that to their daughters.
And it's not just the Somali community, it's the African community. We've heard of a case recently in Yemen. So but they do say in the main, I suppose, that it's Muslim communities, and some people have that impression, and they don't think about the arranged marriages where, as you say, a lot of marriages are introductions, where people are introduced by the family. So the families get together, and you could actually say no, can you not? If you don't want to marry somebody, you can say no.
Of course, you can do.
Yeah, and would you do this? Would you have an arranged marriage?
As in, if let's say for my family introduced me to someone. Yeah, I mean, if they introduce me to someone or I get to know the girl, we get to know each other, we both start to like each other, and we both reckon we could possibly have a future with each other, then yeah. But then on the other hand, if not, then obviously we'll...
Are you expecting to have an arranged marriage, or are you expecting that you will be able to find a young lady yourself to marry?
I'm open-minded. I'm open. Obviously, I've been told I don't need any help, but I'm open-minded on the idea. It's I'm not like, oh, my mum's gonna find me a wife, or I'm gonna find one for myself. It's whatever happens, happens.
So if you got to 35 and you're not married,
and I'll be married by 35.
Oh, so you're sure you're gonna be married by 35?
No, that's too old. Yeah.
That's too old.
That's too old.
Okay, so we've got a timeline between 27 and 35 that you're definitely going to get married. Because what I was going to say is, if you're not married by 35, then we may have to call in some families to start introducing you to somebody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you ever arranged a marriage for somebody? Have you ever arranged an introduction for somebody?
No, actually, no, I never do.
You've never done?
Never. I'm not going to it.
And you're not going to either?
No.
I think it would be quite interesting, quite
But
fun.
Arranged marriage or forced marriage is not good for children or young children. It's good to love married. Is the best, because they arrange themselves, they love themselves, they can do whatever they like.
But there's a difference, isn't there, between forced marriage and arranged marriages. Forced marriages is where it's outlawed. It's actually against the UN Convention Article 1 that you're not allowed to force a child to get married, especially if they're under 18 years of age. So it's actually illegal to force somebody to get married, and that's what we would like to see outlawed in all countries. But it exists especially in poverty-stricken areas where people are especially poor and they feel that it's too expensive to keep a child, especially a girl child, a female. They want to kind of marry that child off. So forced marriages are illegal, and we wouldn't condone that. But arranged marriages are different, and I think maybe in our current climate in society as it is now, I think there's probably going to be more of a need for arranged marriages and less of a need for forced marriages, I'm hoping.
You know, when you said about forced marriages, the UN recently banned it, and the idea is trying to get other countries to ban forced marriages. A lot of people that don't know, actually in Islam, forced marriage was actually banned 1400 plus years ago. And these things are written in the Quran and hadiths from the prophets and his companions and his companions as well.
So why does it still happen? Because some of the cases are really tragic, and yes, it comes down to poverty.
It's ignorance.
This is the culture. I think is not the Muslim religion not force the children to marry. They have.
It's that person's ignorance. It's that person's ignorance.
How do we break that culture?
Because education.
Because in Yemen, Brussels are now talking to Yemen because there was that tragic case of that 8-year-old girl who was married to a 40-year-old man who died on her wedding night, and so they're trying to get Yemen to outlaw and ban it. But if it's culture, how do we break that culture?
I don't think it's culture to marry an 8-year-old. I don't think that. I think that's a very thin line to cross. We got to remember that it's not something that happens over and over and over again. It's a one-off incident, which is absolutely disgusting. Like 8-year-old, that's younger than my youngest sisters, which is absolutely disgusting. But in terms of countries like Yemen, Somalia, even where I'm from, Morocco, Algeria, these things do happen. And education, if the UN or the international community wants to let's educate the culture, just tell them to go back to the Quran. The religion that they believe in, the religion that they say they represent, if they just go and get the Quran and sit down and read it and do research, they will find that these things are forbidden in a religion and they are banned. If they simply go back and sit down and research and read, instead of just coming up with their own ideologies and their own way of what they think is the right thing for them to do, and then claiming it's part of the religion or Islam says for me to do this.
Do you agree? Do you think that's what's needed for people to really study the Quran and those sections of the Quran in order to eliminate this cruel practice?
Yeah, it's better the child to have education, the Quran or another education. After that, married. But if you force her when she's young, when she's grown, how she can take this her and problem if she's have problem or something.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, that's why I think in the UK, as I said, there's been 21 cases that's been reported to the government in the UK. So there's been 21 cases. But as I say, there is a difference between forced marriages and arranged marriages, and we have to make sure that we don't confuse the two. And I think that's what's key. So the forced marriages, as you said, but there's lots of things that are not in the Quran or not in the Bible, but people think it is, or they, as you say, it's cultural or it's habit forming.
Then it comes down to that. In that case, that comes down to education.
Days when people do, even English people, they used to do, and their daughter to arrange marriage or put in arranged marriage.
But arranged marriages are not so bad.
Yeah, if they're done in the right way.
Yeah,
if both parties consent to it and they want to go into it themselves.
And nowadays it's quite modern, isn't it? So you don't just arrange the introduction and you have to marry that person.
No.
You arrange the meeting, and you've got an option to say yes or no. Do you get a number? Can you say no 10 times or 20 times? Did you get a time where the family get fed up and say, right, I'm not doing this anymore?
Of course, people they can do. They can say yes or not. But if it's the arranged, some children they use to go forward to marry the arranged marriage, and some children they refuse. But it's not for forcing for our culture, Somalian culture. We never force anyone.
No.
Never. But some people they arrange. But if the children want, they can do.
So tell me how would your ideal arrange, not that I'm trying to marry you off now,
sure.
But say, but if anybody wants to phone in, they can, because I am going to be starting a matchmaking agency.
Oh,
but what would be the ideal arranged marriage scenario for a modern Muslim?
So the ideal arranged marriage scenario, I guess if there's, for example, let's say parents, let's say my mum, she knows a friend that's got this girl or whatever. Oh, here's this person. Do you think she wants to meet? This girl, do you like? What do you think about her? Yeah, she's all right. And then if that girl gets told the same thing about me, yeah, we'll meet up. I think Islamically, how it's got to work is both families meet up first.
So the families meet.
The families meet. And then obviously we'd get to know each other first as well. If she likes me, if I like her, if things go well, then from then on, marriage can be the next step, or getting to know each other better. And
does it matter if, for you, so just for you personally as a Muslim and a modern Muslim, does it matter if she's a modern Muslim young lady? Does it matter if she's from Morocco? Does it matter if she's from Somalia? What's important?
What's important? Someone who's respectable, got brought up in the right way, good manners, generally a nice person, someone to get along with and have a good time. Whether they're from Spain, France, Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, Somalia, Yemen, Saudi, Kuwait, China, whatever, that shouldn't matter. It's the characteristics of a person that determine whether that person will determine whether I want to marry that person and spend the rest of my life and have children with that particular woman.
Right. So you've got no specific requirements in terms of wearing a hijab, say, or
Obviously, ideally, I come from a Muslim family, a very strong Muslim family as well. Ideally, I would want to marry someone that would wear a hijab, that would be respectable as well. But then, just because someone doesn't wear a hijab, that doesn't mean that person doesn't have those characteristics that I mentioned.
Yeah.
But then it just comes down. You can't say, oh, this is what I want. This is what I want. This is what I want. Because you can never tick all the boxes. It just comes down to whether there's a connection between you and that person, and then obviously in time, if that person has the belief in Islam, if the person has the belief in a religion, then they could do it themselves.
I mean, that's the thing. What we like to do is try and break the stereotypes of what people expect Muslim guys and Muslim girls to say and want. And last week we were talking to Muslim girls, what they would want in their Muslim, modern Muslim guy. And it's just interesting that actually it's common sense. Oh, I'm not sure if I can tell you. But it's the same sort of thing. You know, they want a modern Muslim guy who's ambitious, who's working, who's got a sense of humour, who they have a connection with, you know, and I think it's just normal, isn't it? It's kind of common sense, and it's not in conflict with your belief as a Muslim or with the Quran. There's no conflict there.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is quite interesting, because what happens is people think that the Quran says you have to do A, B, C, D, and is stricter than what people actually.
What people do is, and this is where a lot of misconceptions of Islam come in, is people look at the Quran or they look at one part of Islam and find one ayah or one phrase, and then they just use that without carrying on reading or looking at other chapters.
Because it satisfies what they want to believe. Because it satisfies
their belief and that satisfies what they need. Oh, look, it says it in that little one line or little one verse.
And it's not just in the Quran, they do it in the Bible, they do it with all religious doctrines, really. People look at it and interpret it the way they want to interpret it, which is dangerous. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where the misconceptions of how you see modern day Islam and all the term that gets used by the media, Islamists and jihadists and stuff like that. That they're being reflected on Islam as a general, but it's just those particular guys are just using phrases or little incidences to. Does
it annoy you when people kind of corrupt your religion?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. I was going to use a different word, but yeah, it does annoy me a lot, because all that person needs to do is sit down, read a book, and be educated, and they would know the religion. And to be honest, I've watched these TV programs and watch some people's opinions. Islam's is a religion of terrorism, stuff like that. Obviously, my first reaction is angry and stuff like that. But then I'm thinking, if I wasn't a Muslim and I saw these things happening, I'd probably be saying the same thing as well. For example, because that's the side of Islam that I'm seeing. So that's the way I'm going to perceive it.
And it's easy to grab onto the negatives of anything. It's easy to get carried away with the negatives without looking at the positives.
At the end of the day, like I said before, it all comes down to education. And all these things, all these laws that the UN is trying to put through, and all these things that the international community is trying to put through as well. All these laws, human rights and whatever, these human rights and laws were written 1,400 years ago plus.
So they're already written, they're already in the book.
They're already done.
All we have to do
is sit down and read them.
Sit down and read them.
And be educated on them,
Isaac, thank you. We're going to go to the break, and then we'll come back after the break and continue the discussion. Thank you very much. If you want to join in the debate and the discussion, then all you have to do is, if you're on Twitter, then you can tweet at Star Media Corp, #live with Dawn Butler. If you're on Facebook, Star Media Corporation. And if you want to call in live to the studio, we'll take your call on 0203 397 2095. See you after the break.
It has a certain stigma with it, you know, internet dating and stuff like that. I would not be really, I have not done it, and it's not a step that I'm very comfortable with taking. And I think a lot of people in my situation are like that. A lot of people of Somali descent living in the diaspora would not really do something like that.
Interesting. So we have to find a way to get like-minded people of a certain age together, meeting in an environment that they feel comfortable with, so that we can get more people happily loved up and married. Abdi, thank you very much for your call. So, I mean, I mean, I hear that quite a lot, that especially the kind of modern Muslims, you know, with a sense of humour, a bit like you, Isaac, do you mean that, you know, don't meet a lot of people, but would like to meet a lot of people? So maybe in like a few years' time, when you're kind of ready, you might then find it difficult to meet somebody like-minded, ambitious, but, you know, I'm not sure if you probably don't have any problems meeting women, young ladies, or you wouldn't when you say that you're available to marry. I've got another caller on the line. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening, Dawn. Hi, evening, everyone.
Hi.
Really interesting topic.
Thank you. And what's your name, and tell us your story?
My name's Samira. So I've been married for a few months now, and it's a love marriage. I think with a lot of Somali families, my experience has been that our parents don't necessarily arrange marriages for us like you would see in some other Arab and Asian families. So it's a little bit different, and especially coming from the Islamic faith, it's quite difficult for the young generation, I find, with a lot of my friends from conversations that we've had, to actually be able to meet someone in a halal way, right. Because our parents are not setting us up or anything, so we don't have that route. Some people do tend to go down the route where they go to their local mosques and register to meet people that way.
Okay.
But even then, it can be a little bit awkward if you don't have like a male guardian to actually come with you. And especially for me, it was quite awkward to have that conversation with my dad once I decided that I was ready to get married. Right. So I think it's quite difficult, and we obviously don't want to go down the route where we're doing things that are forbidden, such as dating, you know, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That kind of leaves us almost in a little bit of a limbo, not knowing what to do. Yeah. And I know that internet dating has kind of filled that gap, or looking for marriage online. But still, with that, even though it has been successful, you never really know who you're talking to on the other line.
Absolutely.
You know, I have heard stories of sisters who have actually signed up to these marriage websites, and they're quite serious and they have pure intentions. But unfortunately, there are some people who are just in it to kind of meet people and maybe make friends and are not so serious.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't really work out. It's difficult to know who you're talking to on the other side of the computer. So I was quite lucky in the fact that when I met my husband, it was through, we kind of ran in the same social circles, and we were good friends. And my parents were quite open about it. So once we had come to the decision to actually get married, you know, I had spoken to my parents, and they said, okay, that's they were really pleased, invited him over, and then we kind of went down the procedures of engagement and eventually getting married. But it's almost like you're not allowed to date, but we're not going to help you meet your future partner, but figure it out on your own.
Wow.
So it's kind of tricky in that sense.
And how old are you?
25.
25. Wonderful. Well, congratulations, newlyweds. That's lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for your call. I think you raised some interesting points. Again, thank you very much for calling in.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So it's true, isn't it, that it's difficult. So you're put in the situation, you're not allowed to date. How are you going to meet someone? You're not allowed to date. The parents are not arranging the marriages. So how are young people supposed to meet?
It's not actually all parents that are restrictive. For some parents, they are open, you know. They can.
So some parents allow dating?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some parents allow that. Some parents they are restrictive. Depends your mother or your father how.
So it depends on the parents.
Depends on how it's done.
Yeah, and how it's
done. If it's done through the right avenues, if it's done Islamically right.
Yeah.
Like I know cousins in family in Morocco, what sometimes they do if
Wait 1 sec, we've got another call coming in. It's a hot topic everybody wants to talk about, which is brilliant. Hi, good evening, how are you?
Hello, hi, good evening.
Good evening. I'm glad we've got a mixture of male and females calling in today. So welcome to the show. What's your story?
Okay, hi. My story is is that the guest, the show is very interesting first and foremost. And to be honest with you, with the presenters, what they're saying is all fairy tales, because I actually know someone that has gone through a very difficult situation whereby they fell in love with someone, and the parents have said no.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Imagine. So they fell in love with the girl. Well, he fell in love with the girl.
Mhm.
He thought he would do it the normal route, the modern way, and he would go to told the girl, proposed to the girl, obviously, and the girl said yes. And then the girl went to the mother, asked for her blessings, and the mother said no, just because of his tribe. Again, this is a friend of mine, and he's Somali as well. Just because the girl and the boy are two different tribes, the girl said no. The girl's mother said no. Sorry.
Right. And that, I mean.
And and with the whole, and I've realized with the whole Somali tradition as well, if you want to propose to a woman, you've got to do it through the traditional Somali way. If you want to get anything from her, if you want to be able to get married to her.
What's the traditional Somali way?
With the whole traditional Somali way is that the parents have got to meet first in the house. So you can't even propose to the girl. You can't even ask the girl to go to the house. So the parents, the male's parents, got to go to the house and ask for the mother's blessing, and for the parents to discuss however much money they're gonna agree on. And if the girl's mother says yes, if the girl's mother says yes, then they'll get married. If not, if you want to try to do it the modern traditional way, then it wouldn't work out.
Okay, so you're saying that not all love marriages are going to work because of the different tribes? Thank you very much.
Exactly, and that's a massive. It's a very big deal within the Somali community as well, because and this is one advice I give to all young Somali females and males actually, is that if they want to get married, to ask their parents who their preferences are, because parents play a massive role in a young person's life.
But even in this modern day, that's still an issue. That's still a huge issue. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much for your call. Let me throw it open to the guests. So, I mean, they say when you have a wedding, it's two souls, two families, and two tribes that come together. But what our last caller was just saying, that we're talking about the fairy tale, and in reality, if people come from two different tribes and try to get married, the parents can say no, they don't like it, even if they're in love.
Again, that comes down to education. All right. So Somalia predominantly is a Muslim country. Islamically.
We've got one more call. Let's take this call and then we'll come back. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hello. Good evening. Hi, hello.
Hi, yep, we can hear you. Good evening.
Oh, hi. What a good show you bring today, mashallah. Actually, interesting show. I agreed on what that brother's saying. Somali community will have different tribes, and if the tribes are not the same as like the tribes that the daughter or the son is, they're going to refuse and say, what. So I've seen so many friends of mine that have been to, and it's a big issue that, tribes, although we're all Muslim with the same religion, but then tribes is what that messed up the culture in Somali community. So I think they need to trust or find a way to prevent that happening. Because there's still so many youngs, they run away together even though their parents say, no, you can't marry her, or the sister says you can't marry my brother.
So people who have actually run away and got married?
Yeah, they still find a run away. If the girls refuse to marry that guy because he's from different tribes, they run away, or some of them commit suicide. It's really sad, sad situation.
Yeah, that's very
I've seen
sad.
friends or family that stories I hear. I myself married, when I got married when I was 19, I got married to a different tribe. Actually, it wasn't a Somali guy, it was a Yemeni guy. So I went through even myself, marrying a non-Somali. It was a struggle, but after when my family started to green and everything, but it was difficult, and still we're going through that tribe, problems.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. I'm sorry to hear about the difficulties that you're going through, and obviously it's an area that we haven't touched on. But thank you very much for calling in the show today. So we've got less than a minute left, and the phones are still ringing. And I suppose it's also the reality of the situation, isn't it? That we haven't actually touched on that side of things. How difficult it can be when you actually fall in love and your parents don't want you to get married and people sort of run away.
Again, it just comes out to what I was saying earlier. It comes down to education. And the first point that I have to say is this is not part of Islam. In fact, it is haram. It's forbidden. As long as the person is Muslim and believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet, it doesn't matter what colour their skin is, what country they're from, what colour their hair is. Actually, they don't even have to be Muslim,
just have to be of the book, don't they?
Yeah,
they have
exactly.
To be of a religion.
They have to be Ahl al-Kitab. They have to be part of the Ahl al-Kitab. And I've got friends as well that have had that happen to them in the Somali community and in the Moroccan community as well. Personally, I believe it's disgusting. I believe that certain of the older culture are holding grudges from what things happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And it's absolutely terrible. But then again, it goes back to the point. It goes back to the point of education. One thing I will say though, to the brother who called, I don't have the full dalil. My advice would be for him to do the research on it. But in Islam, it says, if your parents do something that is against Islam, and Islamically, that boy and girl can still get married.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's a good way to end. And Isaac, thank you very much for coming on today. As I say, I'm sure I'm going to find you lots of potential partners and wives. And Zaytoun, thank you very much as well for coming on and sharing with us. And thank you at home for listening. And tune in next week for the show for another lively debate. And sorry for all the calls we couldn't get to, but we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much. Good night.